A fair and balanced debate ahead between Katie Pavlich and Kevin Walling. That's coming up in moments. But first, to our Peter Ducey, who's live at the White House. Why are Democrats pivoting to the economy today from where we were yesterday, Peter?
John, because Republicans more and more are saying that they think a leading issue for them ahead of the midterms is the economy. So President Biden is trying out some new material to try to counter them.
Let me tell you about this ultra MAGA agenda. It's extreme, as most MAGA things are. It will actually raise taxes on 75 million American families, over 95% of whom make less than $100,000 a year.
Well, that's as a new Fox News poll reveals. 45% of voters think that inflation is going to be a major issue for more than a year. 20% say inflation a major issue for another year, and then another 20% say at least for the next several months. So you add all that up, that is 85% of voters arguing, or believing rather, that at the very least inflation will be a major issue for several more months, and several more months from now is when the midterms are.
Inflation will not stop until we balance the budget, we get people back to work, we figure out how do you reduce inflation? You create more competition, you reduce the permitting process, you reduce regulation. That's how you get inflation down.
And so this is the start of another topic that White House officials are trying to talk to. Yesterday it was all about reproductive rights. Today it's about the economy. They are testing out different things ahead of the midterms, and we do expect to hear from Jen Psaki about 90 minutes from right now, just after the Federal Reserve makes their announcement about interest rates. John.
Looking forward to that, and the band behind you as well. Peter Ducey on the north lawn of the White House. Peter, thank you. Sandra?
Let's bring in our panel now. Katie Pavlich, editor of townhall.com, and Kevin Walling, former Biden campaign surrogate. Okay, this is looking like a great panel to dig into this. So, Katie, I'll start with you first, because in a nutshell, if we were to combine all of those brand new Fox polls, the economy continues to be and has been the top issue for voters heading into the midterm elections. Most Americans, these polls reveal, are saying that they feel that they are worse off now than they were 2 years ago, and they blame the government for their financial hardship. That's got to be an opportunity for Republicans.
It certainly is an opportunity, and President Biden has said that he's going to be going out on the campaign trail with Democrats to try and bolster some support and to get the base out to vote. But when he continues, like he did at the White House today, to compare his economic record to President Trump's economic record, as you see in the polling that you just cited, people actually then think back to what it was like under President Trump with things like gas prices and prices at the grocery store, and think that, oh, maybe things weren't so bad, and the policies under the Biden administration have really hurt my family. And it's not Republicans and Democrats. Those numbers on independents are the ones that they're going to have to pay the most attention to. And when it comes to why this is happening, Americans are smart. They want to make decisions for their future that make their situation better and different than it is today. And I think they're looking back at the past year, specifically the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan that not a single Republican voted for because they were warning about inflation. Democrats voted for that, and President Biden has been touting it. And so I think they understand that too much money printed by the government has caused this problem. And the administration, instead of offering real solutions, they're saying things like, well, if you don't want to pay for higher gas prices, you should just buy an electric car and transition to alternative forms of energy.
All right, Kevin.
That's not a solution for American families who are hurting as a result of these policies.
Let's get Kevin in here, because how is the economy a winning issue for this president? You have to assume that's how they see things. There was a big pivot to the economy with the president's speech this morning, Kevin.
Yes, Sandra, it's a good question. Obviously, this president is really focused on the economy because it's going to be the animating issue, despite what we saw with the Supreme Court opinion coming out yesterday. Listen, these numbers are troubling for Democrats. Listen, the president is underwater specifically when it comes to the economy. So that's why you saw him in the Roosevelt Room talking about the great job market that we're seeing. 6.7 million jobs created just last year alone, or recovered last year alone. So that the jobs economy is hot right now. And you're seeing the president talk about deficit reduction, reducing government borrowing. That's going to help ease inflation, as he talked about, again, from the Roosevelt Room. But the president needs to get out there specifically on the economy. He's traveling to Cincinnati on Friday. That's going to be a lot of what he talks about in a state like Ohio, where Democrats haven't performed well in the last couple of presidential elections. So he's taken this message on the road, specifically on jobs, I think, and ways that he, as president, can reduce inflation, aside from what the Fed is doing.
You know, it's the economy, stupid, right, Katie? When you look at the gas prices and who voters hold responsible for sky-high gas prices, and this just isn't about the average American trying to fill their gas tank. This is now about a supply chain crisis that could only get worse as we see diesel prices at an all-time high. Some truckers might just decide to call it quits, but when polled, who's responsible for current gas prices? The Biden administration, 70% say yes. Government energy regulation, 77% say yes. So, Katie, there hasn't been a big acknowledgement from this administration that they're the problem.
No, in fact, Sandra, they've gone out of their way to wage a war on energy producers in this country. We all have talked about how the Biden administration cut the Keystone Pipeline the first day. They put a moratorium on drilling. And then at the same time, they went and accused the oil and gas companies of causing this problem when they wouldn't allow them to create more supply for the country. And I think Americans have a very serious problem with the administration using the strategic oil reserve as a Band-Aid to try and say that they're doing something to reduce gas prices, where at the same time not opening up American energy resources, which we've seen have lowered costs for Americans. One more thing that I would say as well is I think this also goes back to a state and local issue on regulation just generally of the economy. Americans are looking back at the past year and seeing that Republican governors are the ones who wanted to open up the economy, get people back to work, and that Democrats, especially on the federal level, and the Biden administration have been dragging their feet on opening up the economy and getting rid of these COVID regulations, which of course shut down the economy and it caused some of this inflation. So it's a combination of all of those things.
I want to finish off real quickly with President Biden going after the MAGA agenda, Kevin, on the other side. Listen.
I don't want to hear Republicans talk about deficits and their ultra MAGA agenda. I want to hear about fairness. I want to hear about decency. I want to hear about helping ordinary people. The bottom line is that for decades, the trickle-down economics has failed as income inequity grew to historic levels.
Kevin, is that a good strategy to go after the MAGA agenda in a moment where, when polled, nearly a majority of Americans say that they were better off 2 years ago with their financial situation?
Yes, it's a good question. Listen, I love to see the president on the stump like this. You know, one of his favorite things is to say, don't compare me to the almighty, compare me to the alternative. So when the president's on the attack in this contrasting message with what, for example, Senator Rick Scott wants to do, heading up the Republican Senate committee, raising taxes on 75 million Americans, as the president said in the Roosevelt rooms, 95% of them making less than $100,000. I think he believes that that is a winning message for a contrast message heading into November, 188 days away.
All right. As promised, great panel. Thank you both for joining us.
Thanks, Sandra.
And we will
Sandra.
be